Welcome back. Now, police, prisons and civil rights union Popcru is marching to the union buildings today. The union's grievances include low wages, poor working conditions and a lack of capacity and infrastructure. Popcru says policing and prison staff are overworked and understaffed. It wants its concerns escalated and addressed swiftly. Let's go to our reporter, Pule Letshwiti-Jones, who is in Pretoria to give us an update. Pule, I see that the marchers have begun their trip to the union buildings. Just tell me more information about exactly what it is, the situation that finds them where they are today.
Yeah, well, definitely this is not the first time they actually embark on such a march, trying to get the attention of government officials, including the presidency's office. But at the very same time, there are several issues that they've put on the table, including the rejection of the 3% wage increment, which was proposed by the Public Service Coordinating Bargaining Council as well. They're of the view that more police officials are at risk and that there's more fatalities facing police officials when on duty. They believe that the risk is high and therefore there should be other options that subsidize such risks when police are working on duty. What I can also tell you is that this is the very same union which is representing just about 160,000 members. So you can imagine that that's a large number of voices and complaints they're now representing. Perhaps let me just step out of shot so you can have a look as to how far they are. They are being, of course, represented by some of the officials, and there is other members of the law enforcement who are on the ground to ensure that nothing spirals out of control, to ensure that there is law and order and policing.
And Pule, as you said earlier, it's not the first time that they're marching on the steps of government. And, we've seen other workers within government who have protested against the same government they work for instance, nurses, etc. But as the police, march today, what have they told you about those who have reported for duty? Obviously, they will not compromise on that, I believe.
Yeah, they will not compromise. Most of them who are here actually, of course, like you said, are representing police officials, but those on duty are just here to ensure that there is order. I guess there's an agreement between them and the unions, but of course, you remember that it's just a representation of about 160,000 members. But they've now revamped and reinforced the numbers on the ground. I want to believe that Satau, or another union as well, I stand to be corrected, has joined this march too, and they will also be marching on the basis of trying to ensure that the issue of wages increment is addressed adequately. Hence the move to march to the president's office. They believe that it cannot be that they march for the second time and nothing of this nature isn't attended to. There's been several threats that have been made before, Maseko, which includes, of course, the downing tools of police officials from duty. Now, that's something that's scary, because you can imagine if there isn't law enforcement agencies or police officials on the ground, the crime will escalate. So it's something that government may have to attend to urgently and see how they can find each other. But the 3% wage increment that was proposed by the PSA, they are not taking that. They want an increment. I saw there was also just on one of the posters that they want a 3,000 rand, a 3,500 rand clothing allowance. So you can imagine that there's just so many demands on the table, and it will be quite important to see whether government will respond to them within the given time frame that will be handed over to the president's office this afternoon.
And Pule, mentioning the fact that there's the risk of police officers if they are, for instance, deciding to go against their oath of office and decide to down tools in a country like ours that already has a high crime rate, that would be quite concerning. But did they mention anything to you, Pule, about the fact that last year or the year before, government started off by reneging on that 3-year wage agreement for certain increases for civil workers, and they went back on that? Have they mentioned that at all as one of the things, and the fact that they've seen some of their colleagues pass away from COVID-19, which has made the force even less, even less in terms of numbers?
Well, I think those are just some of the concerns that have been raised. And I mean, one must also be aware that there's been several consultations between public sector officials and, of course, the police officials, or the Popcru representing the police officials. And if there was an agreement of some sort, one may also try to understand that there wouldn't be such a march taking place. So clearly talks have broken down over time and they're failing to reach an agreement of some sort. And that's why Popcru has decided to actually embark on this march with members coming all the way from Western Cape and Northern Cape, beefing up their numbers to try and get the attention of the police officials. So we don't want to see that happen. We want to see police officials down in tools. So therefore, this is sending a strong warning to governments and, of course, the presidency, who I believe may be on his way back after his trip to the UK to try and see how we can all be looking into this. There's quite a lot of matters the president has to look into, including the issues of load shedding and, of course, now this, which speaks to the policing in the country and what you just said about the high escalating crime rate. So it will be something that government may have to look into adequately and see if they can address the issues of the members of Popcru.
All right, Pule Letshwiti-Jones, we struggled to hear you there towards the end because of the loud music. Pule Letshwiti-Jones in the city of Tshwane with that report. I wonder who's going to accept the memorandum of demands from the union buildings. Clearly, the police officers who are on strike today feel as though both the Ministry of Police and the PSA is not listening to them, and therefore they are choosing to go straight to the president.